One Python file. No project, no setup, no install step. It just runs. Watch the clock on this one. A single file sits on this machine, and Rich is installed absolutely nowhere. I run the file. UV reads the file. UV builds whatever the file asks for, and the output appears on screen. 1.8 seconds, from nothing at all. So where did Rich come from? Welcome back. This chapter is about the smallest useful thing in the whole of UV, a single file that carries its own dependencies and needs nothing else on the machine to work. Start at the simplest possible version, then work up to that demo. Typing UV run, and a file name runs that file. Where a project already has an environment, UV'll reach for that one. Where a package is missing, you can lend the script one for a single run with -- with, exactly the way you lent a tool a plugin 2 chapters back. Lending works, but lending is fragile because the knowledge of what the script needs lives in your head and in your shell history. Send the file to a colleague, and your colleague gets the same module error you got. The fix, then, has to put that knowledge inside the file itself. So, how do you write requirements inside a Python file that Python itself will ignore? There's a real Python standard for exactly this, and it's beautifully simple. Put a block of comments at the very top of the file, opened by // script and closed by ///. Python skips the entire block because comments are comments and the interpreter doesn't care what's inside them. UV reads the very same block and builds an environment out of the contents. You never have to type that block by hand. Running UV init -- script writes the block for you, and UV add -- script edits the block in place afterwards. Which means adding a dependency to a lone file is the same gesture as adding one to a whole project. Now here's the part that makes people sit up. My init command asked for Python 3.12, and 3.12 was not on this machine anywhere. UV simply downloaded an entire Python, 21 megabytes of interpreter, and carried on without stopping to ask. And none of that would be possible without what Chapter 1 explained. UV is a binary standing beside Python, which means UV can go and fetch a Python. A tool written in Python couldn't manage the same trick because it'd need an interpreter before it could start looking for one. 2 more things, and then the file becomes genuinely portable. Put a shebang line at the very top and the file becomes runnable on its own. Mark the file executable, type /demo.py, and your operating system hands it straight to UV, which reads the header and does everything else. No Python command typed anywhere. Now, the header names what the script needs, but not the exact versions, which means 2 people can still end up with slightly different parcels. Running UV lock -- script freezes those versions into a companion file beside the script, and from then on everybody who runs the file gets an identical set, the same guarantee a project lock file gives you. One rule does catch people out, so it's worth saying plainly. When a file carries an inline header, the project around the file is ignored completely. The documentation says the project's dependencies will not be used, which means a script sitting inside a project still gets a private shelf, built only from that script's own header. There's more that fits in the header than a package list. Requires Python sets the interpreter, exclude newer freezes the whole resolution to a date, and a tool table can carry per tool configuration. All of it still comments, and Python still ignores every line. And because everything lives inside the file, the second runs nearly free. UV keys that little environment on exactly what the header asked for, so as long as the header stays the same, the depot answers and nothing is fetched again. Quick check. A script has an inline header naming Rich, and it sits inside a project that depends on HTTPX. Can the script import HTTPX? Pause here and think it through before I answer. Ready? No, the header wins, and the project is ignored entirely. This is genuinely useful in real life. A one-file utility you can email to somebody. A build step in a repository that needs 2 libraries nobody wants in the main project. A snippet in a bug report that actually runs on the reader's machine. All of it from 4 comment lines. So, to recap, then, a block of comments at the top of a file tells UV what the file needs, and Python ignores those comments completely. UV writes and edits that block for you. And if the Python you asked for is missing, UV fetches it rather than refusing. Next chapter we stop letting Python be something you install by hand and let UV own every version on your machine instead.